Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Money Mondays. We are sitting here in the RV motorhome out in the parking lot in our driveway at the ranch right this second because we just went through Operation Black Site, a 3-day experience with Navy SEALs and UFC fighters, shooting guns, training on how to fight, self-defense, and everything between. And one of my dear friends happened to be in town to run through the training program. And so I dragged him in here kicking and screaming to come on to the podcast with me so that millions of you at home or in the car or in the gym, wherever the heck you are right now, could listen to this gentleman. Since he's in town, I had to bring him in here.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
So as you guys know, we cover 3 core topics: how to make money, how to invest money, how to give it away to charity. And we keep our podcast to under 40 minutes because the average workout is 40 minutes. The average commute to work is 40 minutes. So this episode will be between 33 and 37 minutes. And I will be checking because I want to make sure you guys listen to this entire episode in one sitting. That is why we stayed number 1 in the entrepreneur category for 66 weeks out of the 74 weeks we've been out on the market.
Wow, that's incredible.
And we need your guys' help. So liking, commenting, subscribing. As you know, we're not running ads. We're spending tens of thousands of dollars, actually 70,000 to be exact, a month to run this podcast with no ads on it. So we need your help by liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, etc. with us as a podcast and with our guests because we want them to share it. So without further ado, our guest flew in here from Denver, Colorado. He has his own masterminds, his own events. He speaks all over the freaking planet. Please give a warm round of applause to Mr. Greg Kimble.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say, Operation Black Site is so much more than I expected. And I ask this question all the time to people if they're going to go through one of my events or if we just went through an event together, what was your favorite part? And you can tell so much about an organization by the people and the amount of caring and quality and just knowledge and relationships from the people running it to the people that were participating. It was just off the charts. I mean, 10 out of 10, highly recommend.
That's
so
awesome.
Great work on the Operation Black Site. It's just so freaking cool.
Thank you. All right. So the way it works here is we want you to give us a quick 2-minute bio so we can get straight to the money.
All right. So I grew up a singer. So I've been a musician my whole life. My dad was a musician. And so I thought that I was going to be a singer my whole life. And my grandfather, who was a professor at Duke University for 40 years, I'm actually named after him. So if you Google Greg Kimble, he was a professor of psychology at Duke University. And he said, "Greg, you love teaching. I think you're going to really be in education." And at the time, if you smashed, "Hey, this guy who wants to be a musician and a singer, hey, I think you're going to go be anything in school." Like, I couldn't wait to get out of school. Fast forward, I started my own colleges, fully accredited, and I have been in education and training for well over a decade with brick and mortar schools, online schools, and I've helped a lot of people in the education space. And now I primarily travel the world and train people in mindset and money and fitness and just tying all of the different core pillars of life together. So it's just a fun time, but I love education and helping people make a bigger impact.
So right now you are wearing a purple hoodie that says the final percent. What does that mean? What is the final percent?
So the final percent, I had this conversation with so many people because everyone's like, "Oh, Greg, you're so inspiring. You should be a motivational speaker." And I fought that kicking and screaming. My wife was saying, "You motivate me to be better," and then my employees would say this, and so this thing happened where people would call me up and they say, "Hey, I hear you actually started your own college." And I was like, "Yeah, that's actually true. Well, can you help me start mine? Because everyone that I'm trying to get to help me start in the education space, they're like just a content creator or a course creator. They don't know what it's like to fight with, the governments that are involved in education." And so I would go and do that, and I would leave all of those different companies, and they would say, "Man, you changed our culture and our sales process and all these different things, and it was so fun. Man, you should be a motivational speaker." And it wasn't until my wife and I attended a business conference that Tim Story was speaking at, and he just blew my mind. And I remember him literally like tugging at my heartstrings, and I looked over at my wife and I was like, maybe I'm supposed to stand on stage for something other than singing. because I think I was kind of like bougie because I, was signed to Capitol and I've been a musician. I'm like, if I'm going to stand on stage, it has to be for music. No one wants to hear me speak. And that was the first like connection point where I looked over and she's like, we've been saying this for over 4 years. And it's so funny because after I made that decision, 2 years later, I was on tour with Tim Story and Sharon Lecter, and now they're both dear friends of mine. And so I've just been doing it ever since. And the final percent was I wanted to have my own stuff, like not regurgitated Tony Robbins. Nothing wrong with Tony Robbins. I'm a huge fan. But I'm like, how do I connect it to me? And so it wasn't until I was watching the eclipse and I kept pulling off my glasses and I'm looking up and I'm the impatient entrepreneur, the eccentric, musician. And I kept trying to sneak a peek of that actual totality happening. And at 99%, 1% of the sun showing, the amount of light that the sun is producing is the equivalent of 10,000 full moons. So you can't stare directly at the sun. And so it finally happened. The temperature drops by like 10 degrees. It goes from day to night. It looks like the sun just set 360 degrees around me, and I knew I was standing in magic. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. But I didn't quite get it yet until I went back to Denver, Colorado, because I was in Casper, Wyoming, where the totality was in 2017. And I said, did you just see the eclipse? Did you see that? And they're like, yeah, it was incredible. And I said, wait, did you go to the totality? Because you had to go to a very specific path. And they said, no, we had 98% coverage, 99% coverage, and that was good enough. And that's when I realized, I wonder if we're missing something here, because that final percent was the difference between night and day. So they didn't really see anything. They didn't know what I was talking about. But I had a different epiphany in that moment, as I said, we're taught that 90% is an A minus, 95% is an A, 98% is an A plus. So why would anyone ever go the final percent? So I asked myself, what if I go the final percent in learning about money, learning about relationships, learning about mindset, learning about business, putting the real effort in? Is that same exponential shift available to me if I stop letting 98% be good enough? And so many people just don't learn the rules of the game. And so I just said, okay, well, if I'm going to go play the game of life, the game of being my own motivational speaker, if you will, well, I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to learn everything I can about it, and I'm going to go the final percent so that exponential shift's available to me. And then in a super condensed version, I just ask people, if you don't know what I'm talking about, ask your spouse if they're cool with only being faithful 98% of the time. Then they'll go, yeah, that 2% matters.
So when you're first starting a mastermind or coaching or speaking, let's walk through reality. I like to talk about money on this episode, on this podcast. So your first few times speaking, you probably did it for free, right?
Absolutely.
At what point you decide, you know what, I'm going to charge $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, etc. When you determine that I'm going to charge for that? And then the same question on the mastermind or coaching side. When you decide, you know what, I've been coaching some friends for free. Maybe I'm talking to some athletes for free or some executives for free. I'm ready to start charging for it. Because there's a lot of people listening that might want to get into coaching or speaking, but they don't know what to do or how to do it.
That's such a good question. And I think it really goes back to actually learning the rules of the game. Because so many people will they'll say that they're a coach. And then they'll just go out there. And one of the things that I say is, marketing is extracting value, your brand is adding value, and advertising allows people to know that the exchange can happen. And so many people are just like, I'm a coach, but they never built a brand, so they just start advertising. They just click that little boost button on Instagram and just start pouring money, but they don't have a brand. They don't have a marketing idea of what's going to happen. So number one, like, actually learn the rules of the game, but also being exposed to it. I remember, because I thought that, $5,000 was just a ton of money. And so if I was going to make my goal when I first went on tour, my very first tour, I said, I'm going to make either $2,000 to $5,000. That was like what was going to change the game for me when I was starting out. And then I watched Tim Story go in and make 70, and they compressed the time at the end. So he only had like 15, 20 minutes to talk at the end. And I watched him make $170,000 in like 20 minutes. And I just remember the moment where I was like,
Whoa.
what just happened?
Right.
Like how, what, I didn't even know it was possible. So one of the things that I like, what I tell people all the time is learn what you're paying for. So the lens I put everything through, if I'm going to pay for a service, I always say, and I tell my clients this as well. I say, look, you're paying for access, priority, and then service. If you can pay for one thing, if you're going to be a coach, pay for the access to get around the people that are doing things, and then just watch. And then there's going to be some times where people say, hey, I think that this can happen. And maybe it doesn't happen. Don't get mad. Just be in that moment, be in the environment, and just keep showing up. But you have to learn the rules of the game. And I remember if I wouldn't have been in that environment, if I didn't have that access, I might still be on some smaller tour thinking that, a $2,000 weekend was a lot of money. Like, oh my goodness, like I really hit it. Now, like, that's just not anything that I would get excited about now, because I know that there's this other echelon, this other possibility. So if you are going to make money in really any industry, you have to go be around people who are making money in that industry, and then just ask questions. And it's so funny because the people who are doing it are so much more approachable than I think anyone realizes. And they're so much more, they're willing to help. Like, all these people want to see other people succeed. So many people don't realize how easy it is to ask for help. And the problem is yes, you probably will have to pay to get the access, but just, it just is what it is. And I had to go through that. I remember, actually, this is a great thing. And I'll tell you who said it, because it was Tim. I looked at him, I was like, Tim, I need you to be my coach. Like you inspired me to speak. You need to do this. And so he tells me, he's like, I think he said, I've got this package. It's going to be $10,000. I'm like, bro, we were on tour together. We're friends. We've taken pictures together. Like, I'm using any sales tactic I can to get a discount. And he goes, Greg, absolutely. I'll give you a discount. You just have to be okay with being a discount version of yourself.
Whoa. Jeez.
And I was like, please charge the full amount. And I'm like, what ninja skills? What ninja skills? Because and that's the biggest thing. So many people want to beat people up on price, but you're really just, how can you, if you're not going to honor who they are with the access, priority, and service that they can give you, well, they can't honor what you're trying to get out of them. So the discount's going to come from somewhere. The price is just the price. Like, do what you got to do. It just is what it is.
So on the flip side, someone out there listening, how would you tell them, or why would you tell them to invest in themselves to hire a coach?
So I think be really clear on what you're trying to do. So I love the phrase, if anyone's telling you what to do without asking you what you're trying to do, they're just trying to sell you something. And if you are just out there and you're just saying, hey, I've got a bunch of money, someone will get it out of your hands. But you have to, if you're going to be a coach, okay, what kind of coach? Like, our mastermind got very interesting because, well, I have a 2.5-year-old and I love taking my family everywhere. And so I said, okay, well, our mastermind's always been, if one person joins, the spouse, very specifically the spouse, not a business partner, not like the person that you've been dating for a really long time, your spouse also gets a membership. And then your kids can come, and we hire childcare so that the kids can come, because we don't want the family to not grow together. But then within it, we have pillars inside where you can work on personal growth, you can work on business growth, vitality growth, and community growth. Our events are 2.5 days. So the first day is a community event, brings everyone together. The next morning is personal growth. After lunch is business. The next morning is vitality. And then we end with community. And then based on what everyone finds and how they all connect to each other, we will then help people go into whatever thing is going to serve them. So then maybe that's when they will go to different events or whatever. But the community needs to be the community. And so the number one thing that we do is we have to get really, really clear. And so if you're going to go out and you're going to be a coach or you're going to hire a mentor, be really clear on who that was. or who that is. Like, why are you specifically hiring this person? What are you trying to do? What do they have that you can ask a question? Like, if I'm trying to get Dan to mentor me and I just sit here and I'm just like, so it's your favorite color, man. Like, you'd be
Purple.
like, purple. But that would be weird. You have to get clear. It's like, hey, I want to be connected with Dan because he's so great at events, he's so great at masterminds, and he's so great at stages. And then he knows everyone. He's the ultimate dot connector. It's very, very clear. So you have to get really clear with yourself so that you can be clear with other people.
So what I tell people when they want to hire a coach is they have to have some aspect of their life that you want, or you want to mimic or understand. You may not want to look at some people and be like, oh, I don't care about their cars or their jets or their houses, but I really like that they know everything about real estate. Oh, I don't really care about real estate, but I love that they do charity. I don't really care about charity, but I love that they actually have opened up a bunch of retail stores.
Yeah.
There has to be some aspect of their life or business that you want to, that you admire, you want to mimic, or you want to understand.
Yes.
And by doing that, you get to fast forward life.
Yeah.
Let me give you a quick example. Let's say that Greg wants to start a clothing line for purple jackets, and I want to start a clothing line for purple jackets. But he goes and hires Damon John as his coach. Who is going to get to $1 million in sales faster? Dan or Greg with Damon John, who's done $2 billion in clothing sales? It's a very simple answer.
Yeah.
Every day of the week, for the rest of eternity, Damon John's going to know how to do it better, right? Because he's done $2 billion. He's probably forgot more than the person that he's up against, right? And here's why. Greg and Dan in this example are both trying to do something from scratch, where Damon is not. Damon has been through it over and over and over for 20 or 30 years. So he knows what lawyers, what accountants, what designers. He knows the retailers. He knows the chain stores. He knows the buyers. He knows who's good, who's bad, who sucks, who's great, who shows up on time. He knows it all because he's done, in this example, $2 billion in sales. So the fast forward button for Greg is right there. We can see that part, but also the learning curve, the dummy tax that I would pay to start a clothing line versus Greg and Damon John combo is really big. I'm going to overspend on samples. I'm going to overspend on convention booths. I'm going to hire the wrong sales rep. I'm going to talk to the wrong person at the chain store. I'm not going to know how to do the paperwork. Blah, blah, blah. It would take me hours to explain all the reasons why Damon John can breeze through so many things. Not saying it's going to be super, super easy, but it's going to be infinitely easier than me in my situation because I don't have a mentor in this case.
Yeah.
In every category of your life, there is someone who's wrote a book about it, made a YouTube course about it, everything. When I say everything, if you're trying to open up freaking cemeteries, plumbing, the most random obscure thing, mortuaries, there are literally books, conventions, and YouTube videos about all those obscure categories. All of them. You want to be in pest control? There's infinite amounts of YouTube videos about pest control. You want to know how to go catch rattlesnakes? There's thousands of videos on how to catch rattlesnakes. You want to become a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, start a clothing line, start a band, anything. There's YouTube videos, mentors, coaches, events, conferences, Facebook groups for those topics. So I implore you, go out there and learn these topics first. And then you find the category that you like, go look for that mentor or coach or mastermind or expert. There's plenty of this stuff you can do for free before you go hire a $10,000 coach, $100,000 coach, $25K for a mastermind, etc. Before you go spend money on an event, there's so much you can do for free online to find out and learn information. All right, Greg Kimble. So you have these masterminds, but yours are different. You do it on a cruise ship. You do it at cool events. You take them all to the middle of Texas to go look at the freaking solar eclipse. Walk me through, why do you create experiences, which is expensive for you in time, energy? You know, a normal mastermind, let's just be clear. Most masterminds, they're 3 days. They're at the local hotel ballroom at the freaking Marriott or the Hyatt, and they're very cookie cutter. No offense to them, but there's no experience behind that. They're just trying to go through the motions. You are creating experiences by taking them to see solar eclipses or taking them on cruise ships. Walk us through, why do you spend the extra time, money, and energy to put on these experiences?
Well, number one, it's all about going the final percent and being that example. I often tell people it's my job to be an architect of moments. So I have to create a moment where the breakthrough is even possible. And so if people are having struggles, you know, there's so many of our members who'd never even been on a cruise ship. and they're looking, and I mean, we're on this floating city, and they're going, I didn't know that this was possible. And like, I'm sitting at this ranch as we were talking. I was like, me and my buddy have literally been going back and forth, like on like Zillow and Redfin, sending property in Colorado, because we're like, we have to build one of these. It's so inspiring but I didn't know that this existed. And it's just such a cool thing. So it's all about that experiential thing. So it's almost like a lot of people build event centers, but I want to have experience centers. I like, and that's why we changed the whole model of ours from the mastermind concept. Like, we call it the Infinity Club, because one of the best things that I ever did, and this is a pretty funny story, and this is the importance of people and the importance of proximity. So when we first bought my house, and it wasn't an inexpensive house, when we purchased it, it was $1.1 million, but I couldn't get traditional financing, so I had to pay for it cash. I had to figure this thing out. And it was every penny that I had and every penny that I could borrow from buddies. So we buy this house, and then we're like, okay, we have to get this refied as fast as possible. So I could right. The problem is in Colorado, it was out of foreclosure. We had to buy it as is, so it had over 200 freeze breaks. And so we have a porta potty for Thanksgiving sitting out front. We have all these things, and no appliances, no anything. And I'm the consummate entrepreneur. I will always swing for the fence. So much we're dumping into the house. We're trying to get it to where our water tank or our water pressure could even be pressurized without our house looking like Swiss cheese. And so I do a deal where we get 50 grand. And I'm like, this is awesome, because it had gotten so bad. They were even calling, and they're saying, hey, where's your cars? Because we hadn't paid our cars. We dumped everything into this house. And I did a deal. I got 50 grand, and my wife was like, yes, we can catch up on our cars. Our phones are going to be fine. We can buy a dryer. We can buy an oven. Right. And she goes to pay the cars, and it doesn't go through. She checks the account. There's no money in the account. Oh, what did Greg do? I went and joined Boulder Country Club.
I did not expect this. Wait. 50,000 came in. You haven't had a hot meal in a while. Your bathroom's outside the house, and you joined a country club. Continue.
So my dad, I still remember this question when I was little. I said, Dad, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Because my dad had I just realized I said entrepreneur. Entrepreneur. And he said, Greg, the most important thing I can tell you is you have to play a percentage game. And I said, Dad, what does a percentage game mean? He said, well, if you need $5,000 from somebody, don't go ask someone that has $5,000 liquid, because you're talking about 100% of their money. And it's going to be this giant sales cycle and sales job to try to get $5,000 from this person. If you need $5,000, go around people to where $5,000 is like a Snickers bar to them. And so I just remember that. I'm like, man, I've got to generate a lot of cash super quick. So I need to go around where all the money is. So I just I'm driving by, and I like golf. I'm driving by, and I go, how much is it to join? They said, hey, it's $35,000 down, but $50,000 if you want to just pay it all right now. I'll do that one. Let's go.
I'll do that one.
I'll do that one. I don't want to worry about this again. And then I golfed every day, and I ended up closing $180,000 worth of deals the first week.
Okay, good. I was nervous.
And now
I don't get nervous very often.
And now it's literally probably like all our best friends are there. We're still members, now 8 years later, and our house is worth $4 million. Yeah. We're in a much better position. Yeah. But the thing is I had to go get the access. Like, people are they're so scared because they think like money is a tool and money is a resource. And so many people think that money is the source. And I think people get that confused. They have to understand that, your time, your energy, people, there's a lot of resources, but what is the source? The source of my happiness is now my kid, 100%. And so that's why I'm like, okay, I just want to create a life to where my wife and my kid can just come with me on the cruise ships and all the experiences, because we want to create real breakthroughs for people and not have, like, why do all the breakthroughs for in the personal growth world seem like they're always coming from breakdowns? Like, let's give the positive catalyst needs to come back instead of everyone always running away from pain. So we want to create these great examples, positive catalysts, so that people can actually change their lives and change the conversation around what a resource looks like to them, and then use it as such instead of saying this is the source. So
why do you think it's important for businesses or your mastermind members or the audience at home listening to the Money Mondays to incorporate charity into their world?
I think this goes back to my days in church. If you can't give 10 cents out of a dollar, you're not going to give $100,000 out of $1 million. It's not going to happen. Having a real abundance mindset is charity. And I think that charity is setting example, showing up, providing resources, and it teaches you a level of an abundance mindset that is not available to you otherwise, because it makes you think differently, especially if you're saying, how can I help this specific cause? How can I help this person, this organization, something that means a lot to you? This happened to me early on. So my nephew, who now is the head of my media department, he's actually sitting in the room. I actually had him come and live with me because he had 3 suicide attempts after going through the Aurora theater shooting. And so suicide became unbelievable. Like, that's one of the most important things to me that we can give back to and raise awareness about, because it is very real and people aren't talking about it. So if I ever have the opportunity to talk about the value and not letting people get into the comparison syndrome, and like they say, what the comparison is the thief of joy. I'll go talk to any high school anywhere for free at the drop of a dime, and I don't care where it is. I'll fly there. I'll pay my own way, because we need to go back in and help build these people up. And I think that that's really, really important. So you have to be willing to do that, not because you're getting paid, because it's the right thing to do. Go in there and be an example, be a champion for people who can't champion themselves.
Last question. I've asked this question to most of my guests, and I've never gotten the same answer. You have a 2.5-year-old. Greg, 100 years from now, when you pass away, let's say you're 130 years old, for example, you make it through, you have your bionic arms, you survive everything, and it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way, you've accumulated hundreds of millions of dollars. You got investments, you've got real estate and apartment buildings and all these things you've accumulated over the course of time. How much do you leave to your 2-year-old version of yourself?
To the 2-year-old version of
well, when your child now is going to be a lot older at that time. But
yeah, but how much do I leave to my son?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 100%. And the reason is because I know that I'm going to instill the right stewardship principles inside of him to where he's going to do the right thing. He's going to take care of the family. And, if it was specifically just to him, yeah, but I would have to throw an extra person in there, and I would leave half to Salo, who's sitting in the room with us, and I'd leave half to my son, because he's already learned so much. I mean, he's 23, just bought his first house. Like, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Like, instead of sitting there, and it was so funny because he lived with me for a long time until he could do that, and instead of sitting there and being like, oh man, I have to live with my uncle, like, and I am a very standard driven person. And it's funny because a lot of people think he has like this silver spoon free ride, and he literally has nightmares about waking up like 3 minutes late. So I mean, we get stuff done. And but he's come so far. He's an incredible example, and I mean, he's helped me, and at the drop of a dime he's always been there. But he's learned the stewardship principles along the way. And I think as long as you're setting the example, I would want my resources, again going back to the resource, in the source of how I would want that deployed. And so if I'm not able to do it myself and be the steward of the family, I want it in the hands of people that were taught by me.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to follow Greg Kimble on social media. Watch out for the final percent and everything he's doing with his masterminds, his events, his coaching, etc. And as you guys know, we've been keeping this podcast free. I just want you guys to like, comment, subscribe, share, etc. You can visit us on themoneymondays.com, but we need you to have these important discussions about money. Mm-hmm. We all grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money. That is ludicrous. That is ridiculous. We have to talk about money.
Yep.
We have to talk about finances, accounting, taxes, IRS, how to open a bank account, how to manage freaking budgets. All these things are real life situations. We have to talk about it. So come check us out at themoneymondays.com. Check out Greg Kimble, and we will see you guys next Monday. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Money Mondays. We are sitting out here at the Wild Jungle, the Blacksite Ranch, outside in the parking lot as we speak, because we just had our Operation Blacksite event. Luckily, a dear friend of mine came here as a special guest to attend it and speak at the event. So I had to see if I could just drag him in here into the RV motorhome for your guys' benefit to listen to him about health, about money, and everything between. As you guys know, we keep this podcast at under 40 minutes because the average workout is 40 minutes. The average commute to work is 40 minutes. So this episode is going to be about 32 to 36 minutes for your listening pleasure, or maybe you're viewing on YouTube. Now, this guest, we're going to go over a couple different core topics. Normally, we talk about three main topics: how to make money, how to invest money, how to give it away to charity. But when you have someone who's been building up a medical empire, we got to ask some health-related questions too. So investing into yourself and investing into your body is also some of the questions we're going to have. This gentleman has built up a company called Next Health. Next Health has around 5 locations now, but they already sold over 50 franchise locations to really scale this thing around the world. So without further ado, make sure you guys listen to this podcast because it can involve money and health. Welcome, Mr. Kevin Peake.
Thank you. And perfect time to come in and talk about health and investing in yourself after doing the weekend here at Operation Blacksite. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing.
Did you get tied up and thrown into a trunk?
I did.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
I escaped from handcuffs, did some close-quarter combat, disarmed guns. Incredible. All the stuff I love doing.
So as you guys know, we've been doing Operation Blacksite for 4 years now. That's obviously how we came up with the name Blacksite Ranch. 2 years into it, we're like, why don't we just do it at our own house in our own backyard? We built a shoot house, military obstacle course, a lot of fun things. All right. Besides all that, let's talk to Kevin. So there's 3 core topics. Mm-hmm. We talk about how to make money, how to invest money, how to give it away to charity. But before we do all of those things, we'd like to get a quick 2-minute bio so we can get straight to the money.
Absolutely. So I launched Next Health with my business partner about 8 years ago in 2016. And really the idea was that we wanted to bring together the best treatments, technologies available in the world in relation to health and wellness to give people preventative, proactive access. And, back then, that may sound novel today, but back then there was really nothing remotely similar to what we do. Now, fast forward today, the awareness, the demand for this is absolutely through the roof. But, we give people access to, biomarker testing and MRIs and CT scans and stem cells and hormone replacement therapy. And essentially we want to be able to take advantage of all of the advancements, all of the learnings that we've learned about the human body over the last, 5+ years to give people access to improve the quality of their life before they get sick.
So walk me through it. You decide you're going to start this 2016. You open up your first location. You get to 3, 4, 5 locations. When you decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to go scale it. I'm going to go sell 50+ locations around the world.
Yeah.
It's a big jump going from 5 to 50.
Right. Yeah. And so when we launched it originally, my business partner and I were both running our separate companies. We really started as an experiment, as a proof of concept. We self-funded the first location, say, you know what? let's give this a shot. Let's see if the world is receptive and ready for this concept. Thankfully, it was. For the first year, I was running my other company and that company at the same time. And then finally said, all right, we're going all into this. And we started raising a little bit of money. We opened our second location. And then, of course, the pandemic hits.
Sure.
So, we had to pivot, navigate, change courses. But, we continued to grow the whole way through, continued having profitable year-over-year growth, continued opening new locations throughout it. We got 5 locations open, which is where we are today. We have 3 locations in LA, 1 location in New York, and 1 location in Maui on property at the Four Seasons. And then since the beginning, we were getting people reaching out to us wanting to franchise, wanting to license Next Health. Personally, I was adamantly against franchising. I was like, we will never franchise Next Health. What we built is too special.
Yep.
It's too unique. It's too complicated. We can't give someone else the keys to the kingdom. But you get to a point where, number one, people are beating down the door. Number 2, we've systematized and operationalized every aspect of the business over these past 8 years, and especially going through all the trials and tribulations that we've had to go through. Keep in mind, we're building a business that there was no roadmap. There's no other Next Health type company that we could follow. We've had to build and create the entire way through. And then we get to the point of where we are today, especially in this post-COVID world, where, again, the awareness and the demand is through the roof. So we have an opportunity to really meet this demand and scale the business, give as many people access to what we do as possible. But to do that through all corporate locations, I mean, it's a slow build. You got to raise a lot of money, through franchising. We can leverage other people coming who are saying, listen, we want to partner with you. We want to take this and we want to scale and we want to make this investment. So we finally made the decision in early last year. We started thinking about it, exploring it, putting the groundwork in place. And about mid-year, which is, at this point, it's, close to a year ago at this point that we fully committed that we were going to franchise. And we've sold 55 territories. So we have locations in development right now in Dubai, Australia, Canada, Miami, Nashville, Austin, Chicago, pretty much all the major markets.
Okay, so let's unpack some of these things. So you're already running an active business, but you have this itch to do Next Health, right? You have this itch to do another thing while you're running an active company. When was that turning point you decided, okay, I'm going to now go all in on Next Health? What was that thing that made you feel comfortable to go for it?
I think just seeing the reception and seeing, we had so many clients that were coming in that we were having a huge impact on their life. People saying like, this shit works. I feel like the clock has turned back 10 years minimum on my life. And more and more people coming in. Like our first location, we maxed out capacity about a year into it. Once we got to that point where we're like, damn, this first we're bursting at the seams. Customers, we have all these incredible testimonials. We had opportunities coming to us of, landlords of, we couldn't convince anyone to give us our first location. Sure. Like landlords, we're going around, they're like, wait, what is this? And what experience do you guys have doing this? And, we had to go through multiple iterations of getting turned down by landlords. And then now we have all these landlords coming to us. So it was just really multiple indicators of like, okay, the time is right for this. People want this. We're having a positive impact. For me, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, but health and wellness and fitness has always been my core passion. So it really combines all of what I want to do, and it's just what I love spending my time doing. And I want to create greatness in the world, and I truly believe that through Next Health, we are disrupting healthcare. We're revolutionizing the way people interact with their health, and we're fundamentally redefining what it means to be healthy. So for me, as soon as I knew that we had a real path forward, I was all in. Like it didn't take much that like this is where I wanted to spend my time.
So on the investing side, why is it important for people to invest into their bodies?
Because it's everything. I mean, if we lose our bodies, what else do we have? And and I think everyone understands why, but I think what is so different about today is what's possible, right? Like our parents and the generations before us, they didn't have the tools and the knowledge, and hopefully the future generations, they're going to laugh at what we have today, right? Which is exactly why we named the business Next Health, that we are what's next in health. So part of the concept was that we wanted to create a platform that could serve as a distribution network for all of these advancements. So again, it's the fact that we've learned so much more and we have so many more tools to be able to improve the quality of people's lives. So I think we're just in a much better place than we've ever been before, and to not take advantage of that and not want to use these tools to improve your health is silly. Like, anyone who has the choice of like, hey, do you want to improve the quality of your life? Like, of course, right? But do you want to actually invest the money and invest the time? That's a different conversation. But the current generations are seeing their parents go through chronic disease and unhealthy, and we have a sicker population than we've ever had before, and we all just dealt with this global pandemic. So like the mindset has shifted.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you a portion of my speech that I do at live events, and it's exactly about what Kevin just talked about. Here's the thing. Our parents grew up and there was no Equinox, there was no gyms, there was no Whole Foods, there was no vegans, there was no health food, there was no diet plans, there was no mental health. You can talk about any of these things because they didn't exist, and people didn't know what to do. There was no advancements in medical technology. They just didn't have Wi-Fi. They didn't have internet. There was no smartphones. So they had no access to do fitness programs or meal plans or anything at all. They had 7-Eleven, they had cigarettes, and all these things were normal. All of them. And they had McDonald's and Jack in the Box and Burger King on every single corner, and the concept of health food wasn't even there. Now, if you are listening and you have children, your children, if they're under the age of 10 years old right now, are probably going to live to over 100 years old. Maybe 110, 120, 130, 140. Let me explain why. Similar to what I just said about all the things that we didn't have, we do have now, and compounding rate of technology is happening right in front of our eyes. So if you have a 7-year-old child, they're going to grow up on their cell phone knowing about mental health, how to eat better, diets. We grew up and there was a food pyramid. Do you remember the food pyramid? We grew up and a food pyramid was on the wall, and we ate cereal every morning because we thought that was healthy.
Right. And that was given by the government, the food pyramid.
Literally. And so now your children, and maybe a lot of people listening, are going to places like Next Health. Those things that you have at your service, we're going to talk about your services shortly. The things that you have at your facility did not exist 20, 30 years ago, let alone 5, 10 years ago for some of those things. But 20, 30 years ago, nobody could spell NAD. Nobody understood what you were talking about to do ozone therapy and taking people's blood and checking for markers. The only markers they knew about was crayons. They didn't know anything about markers for their body. And so with that, what happens 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now? So why I say your children will live to over 100 years old, besides robotic arms and bionic body parts and those type of things, most of the major diseases that exist right now will not exist in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. So many of these diseases will disappear. We already have things that are making it easier to live with a lot of the major diseases. We used to hear about AIDS and HIV all the time. You haven't heard anyone talk about it in 2 decades, right? And Magic Johnson has proven it because he's been living with it for 30-something years. A lot of major diseases, especially cancer, which is the one that kills the biggest part of our society, won't exist. Not all cancer will go away, and there will obviously be new iterations of it, but the main ones will be taken down because of technology. Also, there was not hospitals as much as there were back in the days. The hospitals now are being built left and right, have so much modern technology inside of them. And so for your children and for yourself, they're going to grow up in society where every single year, more and more money, time, and energy is put into health-related companies. Back then, there was no venture capital for biotech companies. Now, every day you can open the paper, 4 billion, 8 billion, 2 billion, 1 billion, 600 million, 50 million, but left and right, like it's normal every single day, going into this exact category. So your children are likely to live over 100 years old. Now, why does any of that matter? Why do I open my speech about that when I teach about money? Because the average American wants to retire at 65 to 75 years old. Well, our parents passed away at 73 to 77 years old. 73 for men, 77 for women. Now, right this second, it's 83 for men, 85.5 to be exact. Let's just call it 85 for women. So 83 and 85. So if you retire at 65 to 75, retire at 83 to 85, you need 20 years of money. What if your kid lives to 108 years old? And and wants to retire at 67, they need 41 years of money. Let's just break that down real quick, and then we'll go back to this topic. If they need 41 years of money, and they want to get by on, let's just call it $5,000 a month. Let's not talk about inflation or medical expenses, etc. $5,000 a month is not a lot of money, especially if you have any family members. $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year, times 41 years is $2,400,000. Well, right now, the average American has $1,200 saved up. You see the big disparity between $2.4 million and $1,200? That's why it's so important to talk about money. I literally open my speech up and I say that whole speech. I do different versions of it, and I say it's not meant to scare you. It's meant for us to talk about and have a blunt discussion about investing. You have to learn about investing. You have to become wealthy. You have to talk about, with your children, your friends, family, followers, about money. Because this is not a joke. You are going to live longer. Your kids are going to live way longer, and their kids are going to live to like literally hundreds, who knows how long, years old, especially with places like Nexthealth. All right, back to the topics. When someone walks into a Nexthealth, how do you decide with limited real estate, right? You can do X amount of square feet, and unless you make it to the size of a Costco at some point, there's so many different options. How do you choose the different devices, machines, testing that goes into a Nexthealth?
Yeah, I mean, we've, essentially surveyed all of what's out there as far as functional medicine and longevity to really decide what's most impactful. And we really focus on actual medical services and longevity treatments, and we stay away from massage and the spa-like experience. Like, that's not Nexthealth. Nexthealth is coming in, we draw your blood. Before you talked about biomarkers and people knowing, it blows my mind that we know you know how much money you have in your bank account, you know how much money you have in your crypto account, what your car is doing, but so few people know what's actually going on inside. So that's the core of Nexthealth, is the biomarker testing. So if you were to come in, we start by drawing your blood, and we measure thousands of biomarkers, everything from genetics, food sensitivities, micronutrients, hormones, thyroid, gut health. I mean, you name it, we test it. And then we can even run you through full body MRIs, CT scans, cancer screening. But really, it starts there. It starts with the diagnostics. And then, what are the services that are going to move the needle the most, to put together all under one roof to really create a holistic environment. So we have we call it our technology wing, where, similar to some of the stuff that you have here at the ranch, but we have hyperbaric oxygen chambers, cryotherapy, LED, infrared sauna, all treatments, technologies that have really great efficacy, proven benefits to it. We don't bring anything in that's a fad or that's a trend or that's not really proven. Then we have our IV lounge, where we're doing, we have a full menu of IVs, we're doing NAD infusions, glutathione, etc. And then we get into the more advanced, we have two divisions beyond that. So we have our beauty division, where we do Botox, lasers, fillers, PRP. And a lot of people ask, like, well, I'm here for wellness and longevity. Like, how does beauty tie into this? And if we're helping you feel better about yourself, and you have more energy, and your mental facilities are improving, but you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't feel like I'm seeing that represented. We want to give our clients the ability to look as good on the outside as they feel on the inside. And in my opinion, beauty and wellness go hand in hand. Internal wellness manifests itself in external appearance. So, whichever one you're more interested in, you'll benefit from both. But the most important department is our wellness department, or precision medicine department. And this is where we're bringing in the latest, most advanced treatments in health optimization, longevity. So we're doing stem cells, exosomes, hormone replacement therapy, ozone therapy. We just brought in therapeutic plasma exchange for longevity, which is fascinating. And I think it's arguably one of the most powerful longevity treatments available today. That and stem cells, and the combination of both is like the the ultimate. And listen, our name is Nexthealth, and we are going to be what's next in health. So with that, we're continuing to evaluate the latest and greatest treatments and technologies to continue to bring in what makes sense. And as far as size of the space and making decisions, at the end of the day, we just have to make business decisions, because we, first and foremost, while our intentions are to disrupt healthcare and have a positive impact in the world, the only way we're doing that is if we have a profitable business. We can have all the good intentions in the world, but if that shit doesn't make money, no one's investing. We can't sustain. We can't scale. What? We have a nice business that has 1,000 clients and that's it? Like, what impact are we going to have, right? So we have to be so focused on the economics to really be the catalyst for the change that we want in the world. So, we have to look at the business decisions of all of this, right? What is the appropriate square footage? What's going to get the maximum return on investment? How do we maximize every single square footage of the facility? So it's a combination of all of that to really decide what ends up being there, and it rotates, right? Eventually we have to drop off services for the new, more advanced, more powerful services.
So you mentioned self-funding it, and a lot of people out there, I always talk about raising capital, when should you self-fund, etc. With my sports card store, I self-funded it. I did it. I put up 1.6 million because it was October 2020. Nobody else. I didn't want to take money from people when the streets were shut down. It didn't make any sense. Once we hit 10 million sales, then I decided, okay, now it's time to take capital because now I feel more comfortable. And we raised our first round after that for cards and coffee. How did you decide, hey, I'm going to put up the money first. Me and my partner are going to put the money first and open up location one. It's not cheap to open up a location, right? You're effectively risking millions of dollars to open up a location because your medical equipment alone is very expensive. Some pieces are 6 figures, right? And maybe more. And so how did you make a decision to self-fund it at first? And then when did you make the decision that, you know what, all right, guys, let's scale this thing. We should bring in some capital.
Yeah. I mean, we got really resourceful and just bootstrapped it as much as possible in the beginning. And we were able to get the first location open relatively cheaply. I mean, my business partner operated as the physician in the location. I did a lot of the construction, the build out myself. I mean, we were literally everything in the business. And we didn't have all of the technology. Like what you've seen of Next Health is very different of what the first location was. The first location was a much more stripped down version. So it was a meaningful investment, but we were able to do it. The decision it wasn't an option for us to scale without taking on without taking on capital. So if we wanted to scale, taking on capital was something we were going to have to do.
So you take on capital, you bring in some investors, you open up more locations, and then boom, you start to see, okay, how can I fix this? How can I iterate that? How can I do this? A lot of people talk to us and give us their advice. How do you decide who to listen to in the space that has a lot of different opinions? Yeah.
Well, first on taking on capital, just to touch on that point, I mean that, that's not like a one and done situation, nor was it easy in it. I mean, again, because this business is so new and novel, there was no proven track record for a concept like this.
How do you pick your valuation? How do you do it? Like, we don't know.
So it was a grind for years. We've been fundraised. We're finally at the point where we're just closing out our Series A round now, and I'm hoping we never have to raise money again after this point, and we can then self-fund expansion through profitability. Sorry, what was your question then?
My question was, do you remember?
When did you decide to take on capital, and what was the decision?
Oh, sorry, the opinions.
Oh, how do you decide to choose who to?
Coming in.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly a lot of opinions. Without a doubt, everyone has opinion on healthcare and longevity, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. At the end of the day, we try to root our decisions on medical efficacy. And my business partner has been a physician for 30 years. Has had an incredible career in medicine as a surgeon. So the most highly complex medical environments that you could operate in, he scaled multiple centers and that. So we're always looking from that lens of medical efficacy. And we have a scientific and medical advisory board that we're also running things through. So we've created a circle of people that we trust and we respect, and we'll socialize concepts and ideas to those, and try not to focus that much on opinions of people that we don't.
So on the human side, you have to start hiring a lot of people. You have your first few employees, then it's 10 employees, then it's 20. And all of a sudden you can't name them because now you got 30, 40, 50, 100 employees, et cetera, and growing. And when you get to 50 locations more, holy smokes, you're going to have 1,000 plus employees. as you're growing, how do you decide to bring in C-level executives or people to help you with the scaling process?
Yeah, and that's certainly something that I've struggled with. It's one of those things as a as a business owner who's also running and leading a company. At what point do you cross over that threshold to hire? And also, historically, I've always been really big on building and motivating team members and promoting from within. So the majority of our leadership team are all homegrown, and many of the team members, especially in the early days when we tried to hire those higher level people, most of them didn't end up working out. The ones that have worked out are the ones that we've worked really closely with and nurtured and built the relationships, and we have that incredible loyalty and history together. That's a completely different skill set from then hiring those C-level, executive level individuals who come to the table with all of this expertise, potentially their own culture, their own experiences. So, but for me, it was really once we got to 3 locations is when it's like I ran out of arms at 3 locations, right? Yeah. That's when you have to start really trusting people and empowering people and delegating, but you just keep tapping into new levels of it, right? It's like that was the first level at 3 locations. Then we had to build in more of a leadership team, and we have a philosophy that I've had since day one at Next Health called worry transfer, and that means that you worry about your segment of the business, so I don't have to, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a general manager or head of finance, you are going to worry about every single piece of that segment of the business. And if there's an emergency, you're going to get the phone call and you're going to handle it. And they say, hey, Kevin, by the way, I just want to let you know this happened. I already took this action. Nothing you need to do about it, but that's what's going on, right? That's giving me worry transfer. I'm like, oh, it's incredible. He's handling that. I can keep doing what I need to do. So that was kind of the first level of it, was empowering those team members and nurturing and building them up. But now we're graduating to the next point where we really do need to bring in some heavy firepower. And that just changes. I mean, as a leader, you're leading a different caliber of individual.
So in an ever-changing market like medical, because there's so much advancement, how do you stay tapped in on the pulse of the market and find out about the new machines or the new devices or the new innovation that's happening out in the field, mm-hmm. especially with the field where some patents take 5 years, 8 years, 10 years to even come around? How do you find out about those things? Are you at events, conventions, blogs, other people? Like, how do you learn about things?
Yeah, and now, I mean, it's exponential, the rate of advancements right now too. So it's hard. You got to really cut through the noise to find what's the best of the best. So really, myself, my business partner, divide up the company and the responsibilities to where I really run all of the operations of the business. He's like the medical visionary. So he's speaking to groups all over the world on functional medicine. He's one of the leaders in functional medicine, and he's side by side with the other leaders. And it's a pretty small community. I mean, he's side by side. We just did a conference with Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman, and Brian Johnson showed up, all of these people. So he is able to really see around the corners and get first looks at what's going on. And then we all huddle on what makes sense to bring into the business.
All right. So you go sell 55 locations, you're building the business. Venture capital starts looking at you, and private equity starts looking at you, and competitors start looking at you, and you're in the medical world where there is gazillion-dollar companies, right? Mm-hmm. These are $1 billion is nothing, like nothing in the medical space.
Right.
And there's hundreds of them that we can't even name or spell, of these medical-related companies or medicine-related companies that have so much capital that might want to buy you one day. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about later on down the road, whether it's in 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, or never, about exiting the company, and what would you do?
Yeah, it's funny, and I get that question a lot, and I'd be lying if I said I really have an answer for it. I think we want to have an exit opportunity for our investors, for sure, for the people that have backed us and supported us. They're doing it for a return on their investment. It's something that is really important for me to make sure that we deliver for them. And we do have a tentative plan to have an exit, a liquidation opportunity, hopefully around 2027, 2028. I'm trying to really focus on getting 100 locations open. And then there could be the opportunity to IPO, strategic acquisition. There could be a variety of different paths that we could go down. For me personally, I don't know, I may want to stay involved in running the company for the next 20 years. Or there may come a point where I'm like, you know what, there's other people that are better suited to, to run and lead the company. And maybe it's time to, to step away or evolve the role. But right now, I'm just focused on building the best business that we can build, have the most positive impact on the lives of our clients. And I feel like if we focus on success, those opportunities are going to be there. I'm not trying to force the opportunities, but I am trying to, of course, put the right groundwork in place so that we will maximize the opportunities in the future.
So with all these different moving parts, as you're scaling the business, when you get to a certain point, there's, how do I say, the vultures are there.
Mm-hmm.
The offers start coming in. Some people decide, you know what, I have a magic number in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get to 100 million or 1 billion or whatever the number is. But then they get there and the goalpost moves.
Mm-hmm.
Second, you're like, you know what, once I get to 5 locations, woof, we made it. You get to 5, you're like, shoot, I can sell 55. You get to 55, you're like, damn, I can do 100. 100 becomes 500, etc. As the goalpost moves over the course of an entrepreneur's career, I've watched this over and over because I invest in a lot of companies.
Mm-hmm.
It's never enough.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they get to that point, they realize it's just another Tuesday. It's just like, oh, now we've got 5 locations, now we've got 10 locations, now we've got 30 locations, now we've got 50 locations. It's just another Tuesday because they're building the things that they love. Is this the category that you love, or are you building it because you're obsessed with the business itself?
It is the category I love. I mean, for me, again, I feel very tied to our mission and the impact that we're having in the world. And I feel that we're part of the catalyst for, I think we're going through a very meaningful change in the healthcare landscape. Like 10 years from now, I feel that we're going to look back on this period of time, and this time period is going to be marked as when we had a real change in healthcare. And I think that Next Health is part of the catalyst for that. So, I really do love the category, and I also love the business. But again, things could change. I mean, I'm not, I'm pretty, I try to keep an open mindset as to where I want to go in the future. But the beauty of what I think that we're building with Next Health is it's kind of endless what we could do, right? What the business is today is not what the business will be tomorrow, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. We're talking about health and healthcare, and we can penetrate into so many different areas that if we choose to continue doing that.
How do we get more people to understand they need to invest into their bodies, into their health, into checking their biomarkers, into early detection rather than being reactive?
Yeah. Well, if social media has done anything good, it's definitely been a massive catalyst for this, and podcasts, right? I love the fact that we have, someone like Andrew Huberman, who's a scientist, who has one of the biggest podcasts in the world and is becoming like a rock star. And he's a scientist who talks about health. And we have Peter Attia, and we have all of these individuals that are creating the awareness, right? So I think we're just in a time in history where people are choosing what they want to learn about. It's kind of what we talked about before, the fact that, this generation wants more. They've seen their parents have chronic disease, and they're kind of choosing to vote with their attention on what they're watching, and it's creating this awareness. I mean, I think that we're the early innings of what is turning into a massive, massive industry. Like, I think the health optimization, functional medicine space is like what the gym industry was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, our parents there wasn't a gym on every corner.
No.
There wasn't a Rumble Boxing next door to an Orange Theory Fitness, next door to an Equinox. Like, that didn't exist. Mm-hmm. I think that's the same thing that we're going to see over the next 10, 20 years, where there will be a Next Health type concept on every single corner. And our customers, they use Next Health like the gym, but for their internal health. Like, this is part of their wellness routine. It's just scaling that mindset and getting people to realize, like, participate in your health proactively, invest in your health. Like, you can't go to the gym once a year and stay fit year round. But why do we think we can stay in perfect health by going to the doctors once a year to run a battery test to decide if you have some chronic condition or not? Like, people have gotten wiser about this, and they realize like it doesn't work that way. And I don't want to end up like they did. I want to live better I want to live as long as possible with as few interactions with the healthcare system as possible.
Yeah.
And we're giving people access to do that. So thankfully, I don't think that we have to, really be the ones to create all this awareness. Like that awareness is happening. We're delivering on it.
All right. Final segment's about charity. Why do you think it's important for businesses or families to incorporate charity into their world?
I mean, giving back. It's as human beings, if we have the advantages over the quality of life versus what someone else has, I mean, there's really no higher purpose, in my opinion, than the ability to give back and help other people in whatever form they may be. I feel that what we're doing with Next Health is charitable, right? I mean, that's helping humanity.
For sure.
Some people, like, you go and you give backpacks stacked with supplies to homeless. Other people, build houses in, parts of the country where they need that. I mean, as humans, we should be helping out fellow humans. And, there's a sense of euphoria and gratitude that we get by giving. So the more you give, the more you're just helping kind of fill up your own spirit and soul.
Final question. I've never gotten the same answer. I'm not going to get the same answer now. You build Next Health to become a multi-billion-dollar company. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One day you're like, you know what? I'm going to sell it for $4.4 billion. And you walk away with $1 billion in cash yourself. And let's say at that point, years go by and you invest that money and that $1 billion becomes $3 billion and you just turn it into all these great investments. And 100 years from now, you pass away. Okay. You're 140 something years old and God willing, you survive and you pass away. Out of that $3 billion, how much do you leave to their children?
Such a good question. So my parents always provided for us, but I didn't grow up with a lot of money. We had what we needed, and I have other friends who grew up wealthy, and I think, it's any way things could work out, but I'm very grateful for having to fight for everything that I have and having to just work really hard. And I would never want to just give my kids and say, here you go. It's like I want to instill the principles in them. And maybe if we instill the right principles and set that foundation and can treat it like a loan, an investment, like when in kindergarten, I was selling candy to my. You were selling candy in kindergarten? Yeah. My mom would go to Costco. She would. No way. Mm-hmm. We would. They'd buy candy from me. I'd sell it to the kids. I would pay them back, and it was like a whole business venture. And the school got upset about it. They called my parents in. I remember my dad was like, he told me this when I was like 20 years later. He's like, I never told you this at the time, but I was so proud of you when the school called and they said that Kevin is selling candy to all the other kids and that's illegal and you can't do that.
Illegal. He's 7. Okay.
Yeah. Doing actual, to me, that's what they should be teaching in school, right?
Sure.
Not all the other BS that they're actually teaching. But I guess all that to be said is I just appreciate having to really work hard for things. And I would want the same for my kids. But I do also think, and listen, if there's advantages that I can give them in life, I want my kids to be wildly successful as well. So, I don't know that there's an exact number. I would definitely have, if I have all the money in the world, I mean, I would definitely have a couple million for each of them to be able to use strategically, not just give them and say like, okay, here you go, just go buy a bunch of things and have fun. It's like, here is some money if you're willing to present to me. If you can present to me a plan, a business plan, a proposal of how you can utilize this, we can work together. We can go into business together.
All right, guys, you were listening to the Money Mondays. As you know, we've been running this ad-free for over a year. Our favor that we ask is that you actually have these real discussions with your friends, family, and followers. You have to talk about money. We grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money, and obviously it's mission critical that we have these discussions because it's not rude to talk about bills, taxes, bank accounts, loans, utilities. What do you do if your friend borrowed money and you can't, just have these discussions because it's real life. Money is real life, and it's important to have those discussions. So visit us on themoneymondays.com. Check out Kevin and Next Health. You guys will check them out on social media, and we will see you guys next Monday.